You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And before I get started with introductions and everything, I would like if everybody would join me, those of you listening and our guests today, who I'll get to in a second, if we could just take a few seconds and maybe one deep breath in solidarity of something that George Floyd was not allowed to do. All right. So today, joining us, some in studio, I have Sherif Fouad, the owner of Raleigh Raw, and joining us on Zoom, we go to Charlotte with Chef Michael Bowling, who is of Hotbox NC and Soul Food Sessions, and then in Durham, North Carolina, recent recipient of a nod for the James Beard Award, Chef Ricky Moore from Saltbox Seafood. Today, gentlemen, everybody is joining us because we really wanted to, in some ways, address what's happening in our country right now. Max and I, we're not sure exactly what to say, but we want to be allies and we want to understand. So that's why we have you gentlemen here today to share your stories with us.
Yeah, thank you all for being on. This is the first time that we've been back in the studio, in the kitchen. Felt appropriate. It felt necessary to get back in the center of Raleigh, here on the corner of Hargett and Fayetteville Street, just above the CVS that was, basically destroyed. There was a fire set in the building. Fire, luckily, was out on night one of the first night of protesting, which was almost exactly a week ago. Sherif here at Raleigh Raw, former guest of the show, and has always been one of our most listened to episodes we've ever had. And thank you, both you and Leslie put out such a fantastic episode and really helped elevate us as a show. So that much is awesome. But through this time, you guys came to my house back in the day, because that's where we did the podcast. Little did you know that we followed you and set up shop just four floors above your business about a year later. And so, but through this time, you're our neighbor, man. You're like extended family to us down here in this community, and what we had transpired, what we'd seen transpire on the news and on Instagram and all. We saw our building, going through what it was going through. We came here in the morning, Sunday morning, after the first night of protesting, to help rebuild what was going on and help clean up some of the glass and some of the rubble and put some boards on the walls. I think you, me, and some friends swung a couple hammers and some drills, and we boarded up Raleigh Raw to make it somewhat safe. But let's at least just start right there, Sherif. Maybe explain to us a little bit about, in the moment, Saturday night protests. They started off very peaceful. People were getting a point across. The whole community, not just in Raleigh, but across the country, were all standing together to discuss Black Lives Matter. And but you yourself, as a business owner, you made a stand to an extent. I think we just start right there. What was going on for you in front of Raleigh Raw?
Yeah, so right up until about 8 p.m. on the very first night, everything was exactly what I imagined the Black Lives Matters movement was looking to accomplish. Right around between 8 and 9 p.m., there were just non-Black Lives Matter members from several different groups that were embedded in the crowd, using the crowd as cover for what they were just waiting for nightfall to hit for them to do what they planned to do, which, generally speaking, was tarnish everything that the movement was trying to do. I didn't know that was happening. All I was coming at it from wasn't as social of a. It was more of a as a business owner. We're just, as a restaurant, I'm not in a position to close while we're already operating at very like half revenue because of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at it, really, truly, I'm looking at it just in protecting my own staff and my own situation that I'm in. And so that's that. So we just stood out front from 9 p.m. And when we even got there was already graffiti on the wall. So we knew, and on the glass,
Yeah.
and our building to the side had been hit. So we knew that we were we weren't overreacting by being there, and that these protests were becoming something other than something peaceful. What we didn't know, and what we would later find out, is that the peace was happening because of Black Lives Matters. The violence was occurring from separate groups altogether.
Yeah. I mean, now, we were talking in the morning, and I was like, wow, man, I can't believe your place wasn't really affected. But as you stated, you're like, well, me and my boys, a couple of MMA guys and dudes that you just probably wouldn't want to tangle with in general, decided to stand out front their place. That's what happened. But sadly, down just on our same block, Kendra's place, Art of Style, was completely destroyed, and Apex Outfitters was completely destroyed, but not before a group of really amazing people stood in front of her building, or his building, Apex Outfitters, to protect just a business in general. And it wasn't until the owner got there and he saw these people defending it. They didn't even know him. They didn't know, who this person was. They just knew that it's not cool to just ransack somebody's business, for whatever. And when he got there, he's like, hey, I appreciate you guys all defending my place, but don't you dare put your lives on the line for merchandise and for clothes and shoes. So get out of here. I appreciate it. And unfortunately, the second they left, the place was destroyed.
And I know that it's difficult for non-black people, and even sometimes black people, to say white person, black person, because we're in a climate where we're just describing people as their race is jarring. I get that. But it is important to note that even when you tell that story about Apex Outfitters, the strangers who were protecting the business of a business owner that they don't know were black. And that was caught on video, and we put it out on our Instagram. You got Black Lives Matters, black citizens protecting a white business from white attackers. And like, that has to be said, that not just some local residents were protecting a local business. Like, we have to reframe what's happening in this city, and we're not going to do that if we're scared to say this person was black and this person was white. Like that's where colorblindedness is a real issue.
Yeah.
Where we say I don't see color. Well, then that's a real issue, because people are black and white, and there are ramifications for that blackness and whiteness. There are advantages to whiteness, and there are ramifications to blackness. And so if you're colorblind, then it's the most insulting thing you can do to a black person. So I have to, like, when we talk about Apex Outfitters, we have to say it was a chilling video of two black women saying, these people have worked too hard. Too hard, and you could hear the emotion.
Yeah.
Their voice was cracking as if it was their business. The ownership that they took over their city, their movement extended beyond just their city. And then he came, and the compassion that he met them with, and he said, "This isn't your fight. I'm so grateful for what you're doing, but this is just stuff. Just leave it."
Yeah.
And he dismissed them, and that also deserves an acknowledgement. Just he honored them,
Yeah.
in the way that they were honoring him, and then they left, and as you mentioned, it was everyone just dumped right into his store.
Yeah, I mean, we saw later that same night, after everything kind of mellowed out, at about 4:30 in the morning. Somebody came back into the CVS that was completely blown out and actually lit a fire inside the building, which the CVS is at the ground floor of our building. It's like an 11-story building built 1912 or so. I mean, it's an old historic building. And our property manager, Tony, he got the call that there was a fire, or he saw it on his alarm or whatever, and he tried to call 911 to get help. And they're like, hey, man, tonight, get in line. Like, all of our resources are being used at all times. And he's like, yeah, but this is a high rise in the center of downtown. This thing goes up, this is going to cause damage across the board. and they're like, well, we hope that your sprinkler systems are going to work because we can't help. And fortunately enough, the sprinkler systems did work, and they put out the fire, thus flooding the basement of our building. But hey, that's small damage compared to total destruction. So that was it. So that was chapter 1, and
or almost the closing well, not the closing chapter, but it's as if we started the story in the back, because that was the result of everything that's going on in this country, you know.
Exactly. So yeah, let's get to that part.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, for both Chef Ricky and Chef Michael, and you guys listening to this and hearing this, you know, what are you guys feeling, and share with us your experience in the last couple of weeks.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that, you know, that's pretty typical. It's pretty typical how things work, particularly when things like this happen and there's an uproar. There's always a majority of the story is never told. It's just glossed over. Okay, and I can kind of reference back this going into me, in the immediate, as a black man right now, it's long overdue, completely long overdue. White people need to open themselves up, and they need to take responsibility. Okay, Black people did not start racism. It just didn't. We're a product of all that. They did not start it. I'm speaking by myself. I'm tired of having to say this stuff over and over again. Okay, and white people will gloss over it for a minute and then let it go. It's your responsibility. You need to put the work in. You need to get out there and march. You need to get out there and speak to what's wrong. You need to speak to the idea that, we have systemic racism period in the story. You guys benefit. You just don't know it sometimes. Some people do. Some people play on that whole idea. They know, okay? But we are culturally conditioned to accept that behavior. That's it. That's real talk, okay? This is no, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Black people, my family, growing up, we've been coached on how to manage through this society, on how to be black. These talks that they talk about, that's real. Okay. Hey, young black boy, make sure if you're in front of the cops, you act this way, or you may not come home. That is a real thing. That is not some glamorous theatrical sort of thing. Okay. I've had those talks. I've been giving those talks. Microaggressions, this idea that, I'm sorry, I can go to a grocery store, gentlemen, and I am who I am. Okay. No pretense, no anything, and certain people get treated differently. I can go up to the cash register and there's a proper looking white person there, and they're properly dressed and they look the part. They'll get greeted differently than I will. Those sort of little, and that's not direct racism. These are microaggressions. These are the kernels of racism, right? People don't know it, but they do it anyway. But black people have a heightened sense of that because we've been reared to have that, to think about it. And it's a lot of work. It's tiresome sometimes when you got to wake up every day and you're walking in your skin, and it's sometimes difficult to be comfortable in it. You have to sometimes adjust. I guess from just from an industry standpoint, thinking about the hospitality, obviously we can talk about culinary reparations. The idea of, Southern food was hijacked by white chefs. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And we all know, we go through our history and read our history, and I think a lot of people, are absent of understanding the history. Really digging deep, okay, and really recognizing, some of us have been miseducated, man. I'm not blaming, where I grew up, but bottom line is, I didn't spend too much time learning about me, but 1 month, that was February, okay, and as is you probably did, You did. There was nothing else that you were taught about black people that gave you a sense of these are people who are proud, who are hardworking, who are innovators, who are thoughtful, who invented a ton of things. But somehow, some way, the system, concealed that. And that's the sort of the idea I think a lot of people miss. Really quickly. I have obviously Facebook. You're opened up to a lot of access to people, and I got classmates. And I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, and I had one classmate this morning. I want to kind of speak to this, and I'll stop a little bit. But he was asking, "What is the big deal about white privilege?" I didn't grow up with privilege. I didn't grow, and I know this guy. I know this guy from high school. He cool people, okay, but he was honest, and I appreciate that. He didn't come across like he wanted to be, like blame black people for complaining. He was like, honestly, like I grew up, man, just like you did, man. I mean, what is this privilege thing? I didn't have any privilege. And, I don't like to have these conversations. I don't like to have conversations online. I like to talk to people in their eyeballs, because now it becomes a bit genuine. You really connect with the person because there's a physical, visual emotion, and people can hear you better. You know what I mean? So I didn't respond to that. But, it's just, it's like I said, it's cultural conditioning, man. It's going to take a while for people to unlearn it, okay? And it's not going to be overnight. But I guess my thought, the way I'm thinking about it is right now is like, you got to put in the work, okay? You got to put in the work.
I'm glad you brought up white privilege because I was thinking about this and, my last name is Trujillo. It's Spanish. I grew up in a Latino household, but I look like a white boy, and I know that. My dad's white. I changed my last name from Clark to Trujillo. You guys don't already know that, but I was Max Clark all my youth, and then I said, I don't know that white. I don't know who my dad is, so I changed it to my mom's name because I grew up with my mom. But I know who I am. I know what I look like. Right. And I realized it took me this long. So forgive me, like if I sound like an idiot for taking this long, but I realized white privilege is not. It's that micro thing that you're talking about, Ricky. It's not about like two white boys looking at each other going, ooh, I'm going to give you the job over the black guy. It's not that. That's like blatant racism and prejudice and discrimination. Right. But it's about, I realized it's like, what if every job interview you went into, it was a person that was opposite your race every single time? Right. And the other person might not have a racist bone in their body, but there is a weird connection or familiar feeling when you're looking at someone that kind of looks like you, right? It's the same thing that like we all talked about how, like Serena Williams is such a great role model as a African-American tennis player that not only dominated in her industry, but then also paved the way for young women and men of African-American descent to say like, I see that you could do this. So I want to do this too. Right. And so I realized that I'm like, man, I don't think I've ever had white privilege. And then it just dawned on me. I'm like, yeah, because everywhere I go at all times, people just assume I'm a white guy. And I am, for all intents and purposes, a white guy. And and it's like, so the cop doesn't look at me twice. The store owner doesn't think I'm going to steal. The woman doesn't clutch her pearls when I walk by her in a dark night or whatever. And so that's it. It's like, it's so many subtle little things that, unfortunately, African Americans in this country just constantly have to deal with.
Well, I just want to weigh in here 1 second because I have to say that same experience, and I think I grew up in a very liberal area as a white person, and like you said, there's white privilege that I wasn't even aware of that I had, and I think I have to say that honestly, I don't think I was even as aware until I heard my wife shared with me about, after this was even before George Floyd with Ahmaud Arbery, that black females in affluent neighborhoods were telling their community on social media, on Nextdoor or whatever, hey, I just want you to know I'm going out for a walk, like I do this all the time, and just hearing that gave me some snippet of an understanding about like, oh, that's what it feels like. That's terrible. That's horrifying that you have to let your neighborhood, your community, affluent, you've all worked hard to get there, that you're just simply going for a walk. So please don't think that I'm there to harm you in any way. Right.
So Michael, I wanted to ask you just to kind of swing it around. Ferguson, there was a big protest, but for the bulk of the people protesting, they tended to all be African American, but yet this time around, and it sounds really callous to say it that way, but when another tragedy happened, this seemed to activate the entire country. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it wasn't solely just for the African American community to be upset. This was everybody. So I don't know if you care to have opinion or thoughts as to why that is.
Oh, I definitely have some thoughts on that. It's going all the way back in recent memory to Trayvon Martin, and then coming forward. It's been one of those situations where we haven't been able to see everything that happened.
Yeah.
And then we've had 3, I believe it is, deaths in the African American community have been heavily highlighted in the last 3 weeks. The Aubrey young man in Georgia that got shot running through his neighborhood. The young lady whose house got raided and she was shot to death in her bed. Yeah. And then we've got George Floyd and his murder on the street, broad daylight, with 3 other cops there and people recording it.
Yeah.
All of that, the visual aspect of it adds to the crime. You know, in the past, you know, we've had shoddy police camera footage or somebody that sits on the video for a week and then he's trying to protect the shooters. You know, it's all been different until now. And when you see a grown man on the ground, 4 cops have kneeled on him, and 1 cop kneels on him on his neck for almost 9 minutes, and the whole thing is caught on tape.
Yeah,
it changes everybody's viewpoint. It's not what did he do, because we know he didn't do anything. It's not, well, he was breaking the law, suspected of passing a counterfeit $20 bill, and then next thing you know, he's dead.
Yeah, who cares
it shines a light on
the
it.
crime is.
Exactly. It's kind of like, you know, well, this guy did this 5 years ago. Well, that was 5 years ago. And I
it
think
obviously has like tones of Rodney King, where we had full video footage of police brutality happening. The worst part about that, though, is Rodney King was able to walk away from that and live another day. And this, unfortunately, George did not have that option.
Not at all. Not at all. And that, I believe, honestly, that's the biggest part of this that makes a difference. It's not just the first killing in several months. It's the first in several weeks, and it's the third in several weeks. And then you've got all this footage, and that changes it. It really does change it. Not to mention that there have been so many people have been in the house sitting there, and now they're angry, not only because of the situation that they've been going through due to COVID, but everybody's at home and they see it.
Yeah.
They see what happened. That literally changes the whole scope.
I also think that one thing that was what really added gas to the fire was the scene in Central Park where you see a woman, a black man bird watching, telling a white woman to, you know, that she needs to put her dog on a leash. And you're seeing, I know, Chef, you mentioned some white women or white people are not aware of their privilege, and you said some of them are. Well, wow, we got to see one who was so fully aware that she could weaponize her privilege and weaponize police brutality, it like literally as if she was pulling a gun, her own gun from her own holster. And that to me was so it spoke so much, but it also it was something that really allowed a lot of people to see, wow, for some, as you said, Chef, they're unaware, but now how many people of it are not only aware but can use it to their advantage.
Right. I wanted to interject, Michael. You laid it out really nicely, and the visual of that was tremendous. It was undeniable what was happening. And you think about what this man did and what all the other black people who were killed by police officers. And then on the flip side, this person who came into a church in South Carolina, worshiped with them, shot them in the church. There was no knee in his nothing, no knee in his neck. He did not get shot in the back. He was handled
They
with
stopped
care.
and fed him.
That's right. He was
They
handled
stopped
with
and
care.
got him something to eat.
Yeah, and he handled with care. So that sort of thing also puts fuel to it. That's that stuff that's burning inside of black people. They see that, and also there's a gentleman, not a gentleman, this guy who was coming from Connecticut. All right, he was armed and dangerous. Okay, he had robbed somebody, held somebody up, had a gun, was considered armed and dangerous. They caught him. They gently handled this person. The guy who went into the movie theater. Okay, these are white men who did tragic stuff. They should be shot, right? Based on the system, based on how we handled. So those are the things that I reference too as well. I mean, a counterfeit 20, dude shut up everybody in the church for nothing because of something told him to do so. You know what I mean? So these little kernels, not a kernel, but these individuals, man, I mean, have done things, man, that are tragic. And, obviously they went to jail. Obviously, I guess they're going to be studied, but there's something wrong with that. That's all. There's something wrong with that. I'm not saying they're supposed to be shot, but I'm just saying, like, we're getting shot for like frivolous shit.
It's unjust.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what do you, both of you as business owners, black chefs, how are you feeling right now in general about police officers?
I've always been a little nervous around them, but you understand, much going back to what Chef said earlier, my mother told me when I was 7 years old, when you see the police, you need to be on your P's and Q's, speak to them with respect.
Mm-hmm.
When I started driving, and this was in 1993, my mother told me, if a cop pulls up behind you when you're in a dark street, you don't stop. You slow down, you cut your flashers on, you drive slow, and you go to a well-lit public place. And this was in the 90s. So this is not anything that's new. The difference between now and what's been happening for decades and decades and decades is now everybody can catch it on tape.
Yeah.
People get pulled over and they try to use their phones to record what's happening. And innocent bystanders stop and start recording things because it's not new to us. And for me, as soon as a cop gets behind me, I get nervous. And I've got 4 sons, and I tell them all, they're all older. And when the cop gets behind you, you get pulled over, you put your driver's license on the dashboard. You put your hands at 10 and 2, and you do not move till he tells you to.
That's right.
Because I don't know if that cop's got malicious intent or not. But regardless, I need you to take care and protect yourself as best possible.
Mm-hmm. Come home.
Go just listeners. We know that a lot of our listeners are white that are listening. Just think to yourself and answer honestly. Have you had that conversation with your children about how to react and be around a police officer? Or do you just assume that a police officer is going to at least treat your child with respect? Because at least it just doesn't go through your head that your race has anything to do with why you're being pulled over. I mean, I have a 7-year-old, and I don't tell her, hey, make sure that you're very peaceful to the police officers, because that's not even a conversation that I would even think to have. So, again, that's just an ism of what's happening right here. And I think it's just, I think white America needs to understand at all times, this isn't 100% at all times what's happening in a black person's life while they're in public.
Right. Michael shared something about that idea that all majority of us who chose this as a career and we wanted to take that traditional approach to become chefs, professional chefs. Just a quick little history. Prior to 1976 or something like that, chefs were considered domestics. We were household professionals as opposed to professional, industry hospitality people. So, for me, starting off in this in 1986, wanting to be a chef, to cook professionally, the image of a chef was a round white man with a tall hat and a long mustache. who spoke French. That was the image. Okay, and come on, Chef R.D.
Yeah.
You know, we were, you know, given these images. You know, and you never saw a black chef in a prominent position. Now you've seen them cooking in kitchens, you've seen them cooking in, you know, little spots in the neighborhood, but nothing on a prominent stage. And so for me, you know, being in the industry, it's always been, you know, just me, you know, and honestly, I guess it's by choice, you know, and I mean, I wanted to take a specific route in the industry. I wanted to be a chef, so I wanted to work with the major players, and that's what I did. And a lot of times, you know, it was a small percentage, you know, even like, frankly, it's probably like one or two, you know, but it was always either one or two or maybe nothing, you know what I mean? But I spent a lot of time working in environments, and I can honestly say, you know, there's been times where I never had any blatant racism or nobody called me nigger or anything like that. But what I did have was this pompous behavior, this, you know, oh, you don't know anything about, you know, French cooking, you know, you're black, you're from the South. All you know how to do is fried chicken, you know, that sort of thing, right? You know, I situated myself in different environments intentionally. You know, as I moved up to the ranks, you know, I was in charge of, you know, French, Mediterranean, Lebanese, you know. And think about this, gentlemen. You know, I'm back there, man. I crafted the menu. I studied the cuisine. I understand the essence and the nuances of it. You know, I applied specific techniques, and, you know, I come up with a menu. It's meaningful, it's thoughtful. People like it. And then somebody comes into the dining room, part of 10, part of 20. Oh, bravo, bravo. The food's delicious. And I walk out there.
Record scratch.
Yes. And they, hold on, wait a minute. How do you know how to make kibidea? How do you know how to make basmati rice? How do you know how to do that? You know, and so those sort of things I experienced, you know what I mean, throughout my career, you know, honestly, in the kitchen, and we were, you know, the kitchen people are always, we're pirates, man. So, you know, we share in a lot of things, but, you know, just like anything else, there's microaggressions, there's cliques, you know what I mean? You know, and frankly, you know, you always had to adjust yourself. You always had to adjust yourself to make people feel comfortable. You know, I mean, I'm a hard charging person. I came in, I'm going to outperform the best dude in the kitchen. That's who I am. Okay. And it wasn't about anything else, but that can come across intimidating. You know, there's sabotage, you know, you get sabotage, all your mise en place gets dumped over or screwed up, you know, those sort of things. Is it racism? I don't know. But, you know, those are the things that I had to go through and get, you know, or you're working a station one night and the chef is only digging in your ass. You know, all the other dudes are subpar. Your shit is tight, but you mess up one time, it's a big deal, you know? And you have to constantly win people over to prove you belong in the space. Okay. That's a lot of things I can say how to deal with. But I'm gonna share something to you real quick, which I thought was kind of got on me a bit. You know, I was working with a company. I won't say the name, but you know, hey, I'm a chef. I opened a restaurant. We're known to have a temperamental sort of a behavior at times. You know, it's never personal. It's business. Okay, we're on a busy night. You know, I opened up a brand new concept or reconcepted it. You know, so I was charged with getting this thing open in 10 days. Okay, and I had to hire a team. I had to get the menu situated, hire people, and get all that stuff done. Sometimes it's intense. You know. Opened up, you know, and you know, during a hot and heavy night, man, I'm on the expo station. Hey, I'm directed. I'm the general. I'm going to speak to you directly. It is nothing personal. But one night, I did it to somebody, and they took extreme offense to it. And this young white girl. Okay, now I treat everybody the same. I'm not one to treat somebody differently. I don't know how to do that, you know. But for some reason, that bothered her. Okay. And all of a sudden, man, she went to HR and, you know, like blew this thing up. I had to do remedial classes and shit. You know, I mean, I felt like I was lynched because I was doing something that any other chef who was white would do and wouldn't be no issue. Yeah. We all are intense doing service. We're all using inflection in our voice to get things done. That's our culture. That's what we do.
That was the cliche for the longest time ever. Chefs were total dicks, and they were rude
Right.
and bullies in the
Absolutely.
kitchen.
Right. And the thing is, I mean, I didn't come across like a bully, but I was very, I'm ex-military dude, man. So, orders, everybody needs to do their job. I give you an assignment, you follow it and move on it, So, but she took this thing to HR, man, and I was fucking crucified. I mean, I had to bend over backwards. I had to kiss all the staff's ass. I had to do all this stuff. And I'm saying, wait a minute, man. My white counterparts in the same company do the same shit and don't look like it's normal. But when I did it, how dare he? And I was the only black chef in the company. Right. In the company. I'm not going to say the name of the company, but that's the truth. But I got handled, and it was hard for me to manage that because I'm coming in sincerely motivated to change this business around, fired up, ready to go. And now I'm getting handled like this. I show results, I'm generating revenue, and it was disheartening. All right. And that's the one thing
we're almost always perceived to be as aggressive.
Yeah.
It's one of those, it's kind of like the Ferguson situation before. The cop was intimidated.
Right.
He was afraid that Mike Brown was going to rise up and beat him down. Those are the types of things that people say and they see. I was released from a job, chef, because I made the chef uncomfortable. There was no reason. He just said I worked all the way through the summer. It was a seasonal place.
Right.
I was an executive sous for the whole summer, running things.
Right.
And then it came to the end of the season, and he said, "You make me uncomfortable." And that was it. No other reason other than that. All the staff loved me. Right. Everything was great. But for some reason, I made him uncomfortable. Yeah. And that's something that's always perceived. I know some young African-American women chefs. Yes. They're part of what we call Soul Sisters.
Yeah.
And they always come to us and they're always saying how aggressive I am, chef. But I'm not trying to be aggressive. I'm just trying to be the chef. I'm trying to take a leadership role.
Right.
And because I say things and I may sound a little aggressive, it's a problem. But it's not a problem when Chef Pierre says it. It's only a problem when Lakeisha says it.
That's right.
And I was just like, it's one of those worlds that we live in. Yeah. One of the most prominent female African-American chefs here in Charlotte, and I can say her name because it was a public story, Whitney Thomas.
I know
Whitney.
Yeah.
I know Whitney.
When she was released from her job, it was because she would not back down.
Yes.
That's a problem.
Yep.
That's a problem.
That was a similar theme during and what is still, the Me Too movement with females. It's like if a guy imposes their will on someone, then that's a strong leader. He doesn't take shit from anybody. Right. But when a woman does it, she's a bitch.
That's right.
It's like, well, wait a minute. Why are you letting the man tell you what's what, and you just go fall right in line, but you won't let the woman do it? Right. And so
it's the Tom Brady argument.
Oh, don't get me started on Tom Brady. That's a whole other show.
He's yelling at his coach, and it's his passion. And then when Antonio Brown does it, he's a bad example. But another black wide receiver does it. All of a sudden, he's being insubordinate, and he's showing off, and he's a diva.
Michael, I think the best example of all is, I'm sorry, but Colin Kaepernick took a knee for all of this shit we are talking about
right now.
And he was also a Super Bowl caliber quarterback that no longer plays in our league because he took a fucking knee because Black Lives Matter.
That's right.
There you go.
Simple as that.
There you go.
I have a question for you guys. And just always thinking about, I always want answers. And I'm thinking, we have, no matter who you are, I think that we all have racial, we have prejudices of people that are learned or society driven or maybe icon seen, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the true form of racism is when you can't get over those issues, is you might have been given those, but then you see somebody who you might have had a preconceived notion about, but you see how smart or hardworking they are, and you still judge them as based on your preconceived notion. And so going back into your vignette, Chef Ricky, of you cooking this meal for 10 people, which was outstanding, and they say, bring out the chef, I'd like to think in my my rosy colored glass picture of the world, let's say, or my positive picture, that maybe that's a good thing. And I know for you, it probably felt uncomfortable in that moment because they reacted in a way that was like, "What? Who the hell is this guy? He couldn't be the person cooking that wonderful meal and giving us that experience." But you were,
Right.
and then for some of them, maybe that is the answer, that it changes their mind, or at least like it helps to start some systemic change.
Yeah.
Like,
No. And that was going to be my part B. Yeah. A lot of those situations happen, and, yes, I took, instead of, and initially you receive it, you have to process it and figure out how to manage through it. And so, yeah, that was always my sort of, my comeback. I was like, okay, cool. We got a party of 20 coming in, we got a party of this, party of that. Okay, we gonna nail it tonight, and you that was my form of protest almost, No. You're not gonna come in here and have this preconceived notion about me. I'm gonna deliver. I'm gonna deliver hard, And so, yes, you're right, man. I use that to change people's perceptions, a lot, I mean, I can also sort of reference, me and my wife, we used to go, man, we spent a lot of time dining, going out eating, and Michelin starred environments in Paris, Singapore. Did the whole French Laundry thing, the whole Yountville thing, did all that. Did Seattle. A young Black couple going to a winery and a wine tasting. Who are you?
Yeah.
You don't belong here. What do you know about vineyards? What do you know about the grapes? What do you I can remember a time, and I want to share this one because this was, for me, this is my perception, my wife's perception. But when it was hard to get a reservation at the French Laundry, we just took a trip there. We were in San Francisco. So, let's go take a chance. So we rode down to Yountville, got a room down there right beside, kind of hung out a little bit. We didn't have a reservation. We just walked in. Okay, we just walked in. And my wife believes, and I guess I got to concur with her, that Thomas Keller probably said, you know what? There's a young Black couple in the dining room, no reservation. Give them a table. Because I'm tired of seeing old rich white people in the dining room. That was our perception. Okay, Now maybe we was wrong, but that's how we felt. It's like, we were this young Black couple sitting there, having coursed out meals, having a good time, wine with each course. And I got to believe that he probably looked out there and he came up to the table, he hit the table, went back in the kitchen, So I got to believe that was maybe he wanted to do that. You know what I mean?
So like he felt like, for one, he's reaching an audience that he hasn't thought that he'd been able to reach before.
That is correct.
And that feels great. But there also is a subtext of guilt, right? Like,
Possibly.
Why has it taken so long for this young Black couple to come into my restaurant?
Right. Or be invited or be even marketed to,
Right.
like why is it only rich, white, older people with money can go in and have a tasting meal?
But let's be honest, most of us, regardless of what race we are, can't afford to eat at the French Laundry. That's just,
right. And that's
some
true.
baller shit right there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Hey, man, I had to save up and I had to find some sort of way of, reward. So we did it a lot, man. We did. And like I said, only Black couple in the dining room, we're sitting in there, people looking at you like, are you guys somebody special? Are you, actors or whatever? Like, nah, we're just regular folk who enjoy food and wine. You know what I mean? So, it's just been, a lot of times, like I said, we got to spend a lot of time and work changing our culture behaviors, and it's going to take time, and everybody's going to stumble. You're going to skin your knee up a little bit, figuring this out, but it's worth it. This whole, George Floyd, man. Any human being with any sort of heartbeat, I don't give a damn you got to feel that. That was my uncle.
Yeah.
That was my brother. It could have been father figure. It could have been a friend of the family. It could have been a lot of images, and I mean, it was crushing. It was absolutely crushing, and you see like I said, the whole blurred out videos and things like that, but that, man, and then, gentlemen, for me, the cop was the closest image to the devil that I've seen.
Yeah.
His face. Honestly.
It's that smug, just, you're not going to tell me what.
Yeah, just, I'm doing this, ain't nobody gonna do nothing to me.
I think he doubled down on the fact that innocent onlookers were telling him and pleading with him to stop. I think he was like, because you're telling me to stop, I'm going to keep going.
I won't.
Yeah. So,
which is unfortunate. It's like the community was trying to help, and by virtue of their help, they probably, in a sense, like, well, it wasn't their fault for that. But I'm saying, like, because he was such a narcissist, such a fucked up individual, he used their energy against them for even more. So, okay, last chapter of this, right? Like, we got to start figuring out like what we do here. Right. Matt and I, full disclosure, right? Like Matt and I were trying to figure this out. We've got episodes in the can that we could have put out today, Thursday. We're recording this tonight on a Thursday. This is our release day of podcasts typically, and we've been doing the show for 3.5 years. We've never missed a Thursday show. We missed it today. Intentionally, because anything that we could talk about, whether it was barbecue or wine or the new beer that's coming out, it's all tone deaf to what's happening in the world right now. And we want to get back to that moment where we can enjoy all the beautiful things that this world has to offer, especially in the food and beverage industry of North Carolina, because that's our podcast. But we said we can't speak about anything right now because there's nothing to speak about other than this. And we were fortunate to have the three of you gentlemen on the call today. But in this process, Matt and I, we have our own frustrations, right? We were like, we want to help. We want to know how to help. We want to know what to do. I've seen many of my friends that are of color on social media saying like, I know you're trying to help, but this ain't the right way, or you're doing it wrong. This is what you should be doing. And what that does for us is make us a little frustrated because we're like, hey man, that, like, Ricky, you see me. Michael, we've never officially met. We're like Facebook friends and all. That's about it. But we have mutual friends. And I would hope to know, and I hope our listeners know, that our love is for humanity. That is beyond anything first. I mean, Sherif, before we get out of here, I got to ask you, tell the audience like what you do outside of just being a business owner for Raleigh Raw, because you talk about humanity as your own gospel and like how you can be a great person to the next. So just blindly and ignorantly knowing what does a person that's non-black in this situation do to be the most effective during this time? Because right now,
show support.
Everything is up. Okay, but what does that mean? What does that mean?
Like, we gotta know. Doing what you're doing now. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, Max.
No. Please.
But doing what you're doing now and using your platform on social media and always being willing to have the uncomfortable conversations with the people that look like you. Black people have been stomping their feet about the inequality and the racism and the bias for decades. But we can make a lot of noise, but without allies to help make the change, it seems like all we're doing is stomping our feet. So in my opinion, and it's just my humble opinion, the best thing that you can do is what you're doing now and then continuing along this path. It can't just be this week because of the Floyd situation in Minnesota. It has to be a continuing process of being able and willing to walk alongside of us in the marches, in the election box, in the ballot box, all of these things, because we can make all the noise we want, but if we don't make a change of the people that run this country, that make the laws, that do these things, and people don't know that there's enough of support behind these movements to actually cause changes, in November and on election days, then it's all just smoke and mirrors.
It's all for nothing.
Yeah.
Yep.
George Floyd dies for nothing. Ahmaud Arbery dies for nothing. Many people die for nothing if we can't keep the momentum. And we have momentum right now. And so we can't stop the momentum. And I mean, right now we are fortunately in an election year. And I don't give a shit who cares what I have to say about this, but we're in an election year and things need to change. So how about I just say that?
Right.
There you go.
Right. And also, we got to think locally too. You know, a lot of times, you know, we always think nationally when we vote. Okay, we got to vote in the neighborhood, in our cities.
Yes, sir.
That's real important. That's where the foolishness happens. Okay, honestly, Max, to speak to what one should do, non-black person. You know, and Mike said, you know, reference things been happening for years. Reference history. I think a lot of times history really brings light to things. You know, if you know the things been happening continuously over the years, and it kind of helps you understand, like, wow, you know, let me research, and you come to find out, man, this is happening again and again and again and again. Now you become even more, you know, intense about wanting to help. You know, I think one of the things also needs to happen is let's be authentic in what you do. And I guess, you know, my wishful thinking is think about racism like black people do it every day. Put yourself in a situation where we think about it every day. We wake up every day thinking about it. You wake up every day thinking about it. Thinking about, I mean, you know, honestly, consciously, I know it will be a difficult thing to do. I know it's wishful thinking, but think about it the same way we do and put yourself in those circumstances. Put yourself in situations where, you know, even if you don't, I mean, there's plenty of examples out there. You know what I mean? Put yourself in the shoes of a black person who wakes up every day having to walk in their skin. You know, and if you don't know exactly what that means, you can ask a question. You know what I mean? You can ask to ask. You know, I think dialogue needs to be extremely raw and direct, but not disrespectful. Okay, we can talk like men and women. You know what I mean? And have a really honest conversation. You know, if you authentically want to understand and learn. I think, you know, my concern is just the idea that, you know, the authenticity of wanting to change things. You know, it's got to be a lifestyle change. Good men. Yeah, that's what it needs to be. A lifestyle change.
I feel America is ready for this. Like, I genuinely do. I think there's just we've had all we can take, you know, and I don't know. Sherif, like,
I think Michael, do you want to say something?
I've got to go to the kitchen. I'm sorry, guys. I've got people coming. My guys need me in the kitchen. I hate to run. This is a great conversation. I wish I could say, but
thank you so much for joining us.
Mike,
I really appreciate it.
We appreciate it, man. Sherif, as I mentioned before, like you've been doing a lot, like up here at Raleigh Raw, you've got like an upstairs area where you've been teaching a lot of classes. Now, directly, it wasn't, you know, for this in particular social cause.
Actually, it was.
Oh, it was.
It's been about other things, but we read White Fragility 2 months ago. We read Me and White Supremacy a few months ago. Right. The interesting thing is that it was small groups of attendees. The interest was low. It wasn't the hot trending topic at the time. Right. So we're actually doing White Fragility again at the end of the month. Just because, as I mentioned before, my audience is generally white with a few close black friends that are helping facilitate the conversation because they want to, not because I'm going out to them and saying, "Hey, black friends, tell us what to do." They're authentically involved in Raleigh Raw and Raw U. It's not a stretch to have. They're already customers. Some are vegan, and so I think that's very natural. But to add to what you guys were saying about what do we do to help because we don't want to lose the momentum, and Chef, you mentioned this is a lifestyle. So what else is a lifestyle? losing weight and staying in shape is a lifestyle. Yeah. Well, what would you tell somebody who's going to lose weight and stay in shape so you don't just do the resolution thing where you just do it for January and then you quit the gym?
Yeah, no carbs, no sugar for 3 weeks.
That's what we're worried is about to happen here, right?
Right.
And so what would you tell someone who is going to keep that lifestyle? What I would tell them is, what is it that you love? What's the type of workout that you like to do? If you like to do yoga, do yoga. Don't start running marathons. If you like to do yoga, don't hit the gym and hit heavy weights. If you like to do yoga, stay in your lane.
Right.
And so don't tell someone who's got a hard time making ends meet that they need to donate to Black Lives Matter, right? They might do that with an inherent sense of guilt, but that's not going to be sustainable. And so for me, my business is in a lot of debt. I'm not in a position where I can donate. I know that in the future I will be, but my position is, as you mentioned, I have a platform and we teach. I'm a teacher. And so that's where I'm contributing. And like Chef said earlier, you guys have a podcast. That's your platform. So if everyone stays in their lane and everyone does what they do, then you can honor the movement without abandoning yourself, because that's another issue. If everyone gets out of their own seat and abandons their own sense of identity to jump on a grenade of an issue that's not theirs, there's going to be a natural sense of resentment. It sounds good, but psychology doesn't work that way. You start helping somebody else for too long, you now have a toxic codependent relationship, right? And so you need to make sure that you're helping someone, but not at the expense of yourself. You're pouring from a full cup, and you can't do that unless you're helping, utilizing your own strengths and inherent gifts.
I'll say this. In closing, and Matt, you feel free to obviously finish the show out, but there were a couple of things that I experienced on Sunday morning after the first nights of the riots or protests and the aftermath that happened. My wife and I came out here in the morning, and we helped clean up. We helped doing things. I witnessed a lot of good, and I want to end on that. And our girl AC Ashley, she experienced as much looting and rioting on her businesses as much. And the first person I saw when I was walking out there, I see Ashley, she's wiping graffiti off of Trophy Tapping Tables building. Like, it wasn't hers. It was her neighbor's. And I know she wasn't doing it for a photo op. She's like, oh, there's graffiti there. It needs to be cleaned. Janessa and Todd over at Parkside had a bunch of sandwiches they made, turkey and cheese and, a nice tomato on some bread with a bag of chips, and they were just walking down and saw people working and handed them sandwiches to keep fuel in their bellies so that they could keep working. And I was a recipient of one of those sandwiches, which I mowed down hard while we were putting out the plywood on Raleigh Raw. Nicole Sullivan, Jonathan Melton, and Sage Martin. These are three of our city council people. Jonathan and Sage, newly elected.
Yes.
And I remember, I'm sitting there, I was, frustrated, but then also felt this warm calm of, look at this, everybody is, all of downtown is here right now, and we're all coming together to, clean and help. And I said to Nicole, this is Raleigh, this right here, all this group doing this. And then she looked at me and she said, and sorry, Nicole, for speaking on your terms without you in this room, but she said, actually, last night was Raleigh too. Don't forget. Royale right now, the windows are completely blown out. I went and saw our boy Jeff Sizer, the chef there, chef owner. We got there at 9 a.m. Place was completely cleaned up by the time we got there. And now there's something beautiful happening at Royale. They painted all the boards white and allowed everyone to come in and just paint positive goodness all over the place. And it's actually a thing of beauty. I'm like, it's almost a shame that once those windows get fixed and put down, that those panels of love are going to be taken down. So hopefully we can do something with them and remember them. And maybe we can figure out something that we can do in our city so that we don't forget that this is where we were and this is how we are. And Drew Shank, he's one of the owners of Dram and Draft and Kolatka Vodka. He's a local restaurant owner. He drove his Kolatka van down here on Fayetteville Street just filled with plywood. He's like, hey, man, I don't know if anyone can use it, but I just had it on my work site, so here you go. Do you need this? And in fact, that's the wood that we use for Raleigh Raw. poor Drew, he's like, he's going to hate this when I say this out loud, but he's like, I'm going to have a hernia surgery tomorrow, so I can't really help carry all this. And I'm like, shit. And I was trying to carry. He's like, oh, screw it, here. And he just did it. And he carried it with me. That poor bastard was in pain walking over and carried all the wood over there. But why? Because he wanted to, and because he felt compelled to help his community. So I'm just saying thank you to the community that we have, both in Raleigh, in North Carolina, and in our country. Like, to those that want to help and those that want to see this change happen, it really is on you, and it always will be on you. And we cannot forget the things that we have done that have led to get to this point. And like you said, Ricky, just keep reminding people.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Well, I just want to say, Chef Ricky, thank you so much for being here. Sherif, thank you so much for sharing your stories and at least illuminating somewhat of a path to what we as individuals can do. So, and that is a beautiful story about how Raleigh came together. Unfortunate, even for some bad, there is some good arises. You have to have the darkness, I guess, for the light to eventually come. But I also was listening to something today that made me think, and a lot of you have echoed those sentiments in the sense of, if we all take care of our own little corner of the world, and you said it yourself, Ricky, about electing our local officials too, and we take care of our family and our neighbors and their neighbors, that's probably how we'll all get it done. But fortunately, everybody has to do that. So, in the meantime, one thing that you can do is definitely go and support your people of color owned businesses like Saltbox Seafood Joint in Durham. You can go to Raleigh Raw here in Raleigh and go support Hotbox in NC and Soul Food Sessions out in Charlotte, and you will eat and drink very merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.